about the Allende socialist government in Chile. It's the same tactic today. And the US
so here's Ben Norton.
The tactic it always uses, which is an economic blockade, economic warfare. It's going to try to make the economy scream, as Richard Nixon famously said about the Allende socialist government in Chile. It's the same tactic today, and we've seen in Cuba that it doesn't work in removing the popular government, but it does work in making the people suffer.
Right, and that's the whole point of economic sanctions. Here's Ben Norton inside, you know, here's the inside Nicaragua's 2021 elections. It's by the Grayzone.
About the electoral process today.
¿Qué piensa usted del proceso electoral?
Bueno, un proceso, bueno, meramente limpio, ¿verdad? Y estamos pues agradecidos pues por habernos dado la oportunidad de votar. Como ciudadanos, como nicaragüenses que somos, tenemos derecho a ejercer nuestro voto dentro de nuestro país.
Fue el proceso electoral.
He's going to ask several of them, and they all give the, you know, the same answer, that it was a good, nice, you know, clean election, no problems whatsoever. And that's a very important, you know, journalism. We actually got people, you know, boots on the ground, people in Nicaragua that are actually, you know, talking about their election or what have you. People from, you know, goddamn DC. What the hell do they know what's going on in Nicaragua, especially since there's, you know, sort of a Cold War stalemate going on. So I'm going to make a couple comments about the election in Nicaragua, which it does seem like it's a slide toward authoritarianism, but I'm also opposed to U.S. imperialism. If Nicaragua was becoming an authoritarian state, is the answer U.S. imperialism? Is it neoliberalism? That absolutely is not the answer. And so what do we got here? We got lots of stuff. So let's start from the Miami Herald. This is from the Miami Herald. They're talking about the new sanctions. Joe Biden just put sanctions on Nicaragua because of this election. And it's, you know, the House and Congress, they could go ahead and pass shit like this when it's to, you know, imperialized a foreign nation. But when it comes to the plight of the American people, where the hell are they? But from the Miami Herald, they're talking about and it's the new economic sanctions. There are some old 2018 economic sanctions. So Donald Trump is doing economic sanctions. Joe Biden's doing economic sanctions. From the Miami Herald, you have the White House announced that Biden signed the Reinforcing Nicaragua's Adherence to Conditions for Electoral Reform Act, a bill that requires targeted sanctions to advance elections in Nicaragua. Coordinates U.S. sanctions with Canadian and European diplomats, require classified and unclassified reports on Ortega's corruption and Russian involvement in Nicaragua, and supports independent media in the country. The House of Representatives passed a bill known as the Renancer Act on a 387 to 35 vote. 387 to 35. Is there anything more unanimous in fuck over Nicaragua? 387 to 35 said yes, fuck over Nicaragua, give them economic sanctions, let's make their economy scream, let's hurt the people of Nicaragua in the hopes that so many Nicaraguans are screaming and dying of, you know, starvation and oppression that eventually they overthrow their own president. What would economic sanctions do to America? If we start to be, you know, starved, would we rise up against our oppressor? So this is such bullshit. The Senate and the Representatives, the Congress, they passed Renancer ahead of Sunday's elections. They didn't even know that the elections had happened, but they were calling it a sham election, you know, weeks before the elections had happened. And then Biden's going to sign it after the elections, but it was passed beforehand. So you have the 2008 sanctions, and now you got 2021 to 2021 sanctions. And economic sanctions is a prelude to war. You go ahead and do economic sanctions, you're saying that you want to go to war with Nicaragua. So there you go. America, your U.S. government is trying to push us into a war with Nicaragua. Have we done this before? Yeah, we did. In, 1979, in the 80s, under Ronald Reagan, non-stop war with the Nicaraguan Sandinistas. That was the Iran-Contra affair. Ronald Reagan was selling weapons to Iran to get some money for the Contras, and the Contras were fighting the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. So the Renaissance Act, right? We're passing economic sanctions. This is a prelude to war. And is it really that big of a fucking deal to think that that a nation, U.S. government is trying to fuck up Nicaragua's election, just like they did in Haiti, just like they've done over and over again? Jesus Christ, you take away the U.S.'s, apparent right to coup d'etat. What else are they going to do with their time? So you had Marco Rubio was, big into pushing the Renaissance, but South Florida's U.S. House members from both parties was all in supportive of it. So was Colorado. So across the board, you got this bipartisan support. To give credit where credit is due, you had a lot of the high-profile progressives vote no on the sanctions. AOC voted no on the sanctions on Nicaragua. Ayanna Pressley voted no on the sanctions on Nicaragua. Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, and Mark Pocan all voted no on the sanctions against Nicaragua. But when it comes to the Colorado delegation of the representatives, of the 7 representatives from the state of Colorado, only Ken Buck, a Republican in Colorado's 4th Congressional District, had the chutzpah to vote no. The rest of them, Jason Crow, Diana DeGette, Doug Lamborn, Joe Neguse Boebert, Lauren Boebert, and Ed Perlmutter. And Ed Perlmutter, that's a Democrat of Colorado's 7th. Boebert is, GOP, Colorado's 3rd. Joe Neguse is a Democrat of Colorado's 2nd. Doug Lamborn is a Republican of Colorado's 5th. Diana DeGette is a Democrat of Colorado's 1st. And Jason Crow is a Democrat of Colorado's 6th. So 1, 2, 3, 4 Democrats of Colorado voted yes. Yes, they want war with Nicaragua. Yes, they want to punish the people of Nicaragua with economic sanctions. Yes, 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 yes. You had one Republican, Ken Buck, in Colorado that voted no. And then you also had, the other, one GOP, 2 Republicans voted yes, proudly Boebert and Doug Lamborn. And like I said before, Ed Perlmutter, Joe Neguse, Diana DeGette, Jason Crow, they did not go the way of the progressive squad. They went the way of the neoliberal, imperialist, capitalistic, New World Order. So, what the fuck? Of Colorado 7-person, representative delegation, 6 of the 7 voted yes for war with Nicaragua. What the fuck, Jason Crow? Fuck you, Jason Crow. Fuck you, Diana DeGette. Fuck you, Doug Lamborn. Fuck you, Joe Neguse. Fuck you, Lauren Boebert. And fuck you, Ed Perlmutter. I don't always like the progressive squad on a lot of things, but they voted correctly on this one. AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, and Mark Pocan. And apparently Ken Buck. Ken Buck is a progressive. So who would have known? Now, I've been watching the coverage by the Grayzone and by the Convo Couch. Incredible coverage by the Grayzone on Nicaragua's elections. Ben Norton of the Grayzone, Fiorella, Isabel, and Pasta, the Convo Couch went down there. Johnny Tsunami, and I'm sure a bunch of other ones. But Ben Norton was Nicaragua. They had elections. What I got to see with my own eyes is that Nicaragua had their own elections, and there were options. They had 5 other options on the ballot. Now, they'll say some were disqualified. Well, America disqualifies people. Shit, you just had a mayor in Alamosa just say that he ran unopposed. Bullshit. Well, maybe, maybe it's possible, but it's also possible that they said the signatures or this or that. They do a lot of dumb shit, throw some legal shit at a person to disqualify their candidacy. So what I saw with, the Grayzone and Fiorella Isabel with the Convo Cats is I saw Nicaragua had an election. I saw it with my own goddamn eyes. I saw them going to the polls. And while I read that there was an 80% abstention rate, they abstained, right? They said no to voting. 80%. So that means the turnout rate was either 65%, the official turnout rate was 65%, but somebody else said it was 18%. So 18%, that's not a democracy, right? You need a majority. But Terry McAuliffe, he only won with 8% of the electorate voting in the Democratic primary in 2021. Well, that's way better than Terry McAuliffe. I mean, even if it was only 18% turnout rate, well, that's 10% more than the 8% turnout rate of Virginia, the Democrats, when they voted for Terry McAuliffe during the primary. So Ortega is going to take, a whopping 75% of the vote, which means what? He's super adored or super corrupt. Perhaps, a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, because 75%, that seems too much. But it is possible. It's possible that a nation could love their leader that goddamn much. But typically, with Diverger's Law, you got to have one opposition candidate that's real close to beating them, or else this was not a fair election. Turnout, like I said, the official was 65%, 18%, which is, you know, embarrassing, but still above Virginia. That's still higher than Terry McAuliffe's 8% turnout. And what Terry McAuliffe's 8% turnout rate says that American democracy, all you need is for one person to vote. It doesn't matter if you have a democratic legitimacy. It doesn't matter if a majority of the people vote. It doesn't fucking matter. If one asshole comes out to vote, then that person gets whatever they want, however they voted. So in America, it doesn't matter if the majority of the people participate in an election or not. It seems like a crazy-ass standard that we're going to use for all the other countries in the world and not use it for our own elections here. Now, the Grayzone had previously stopped the U.S. coup on Venezuela. Is it any surprise that when the U.S. government, you know, with Trump and Juan Guaido and with Haiti, when it comes to Biden, you know, Juan Guaido, he's what, the emperor of all his stuffed animals on his bed? It's a Lee Camp joke, but when the U.S. government gets used to overthrowing the world's governments, does it seem like that's big of a, you know, that it would be a big shocker that they would feel so entitled that they would want to overthrow their own government, such as Donald and company, what he attempted on January 6th over his big lie? So Donald Trump wanted Juan Guaido to steal Venezuela, and then Donald Trump wanted to steal America. So Joe Biden isn't, you know, any better. He should be impeached for murder for that last bombing on Afghanistan. That entire Afghanistan family was murdered. Murdered. Well, we get bombed and we'll just kill any innocent people out there just to say, hey, we done something? That's fucking murder. And Joe Biden should be impeached for murder. It's also been said that Daniel Ortega has jailed more than 150 opponents, including 7 who said that they want to run against him. Well, this is very interesting because it looks like to me that there is some shenanigans, there is some bullshit when it comes to, you know, his election, but he also has the U.S. empire breathing down his neck. In the 80s, the entire 1980s was the U.S., you know, going to war with the Sandinistas only in 1990 to get the U.S.-backed candidate to get reelected or to get elected, and then it was just neoliberal fascist policies. That's what Daniel Ortega said. Daniel Ortega said this: the European Union has a parliamentary whose majority are fascist Nazis. So the European Union, oh, those fascist fucking Nazis, the fascist little brothers of Hitler that are governing in the European Union, this is Daniel Ortega now want to form a fascist international in our Americas. That does piss me off. Motherfucking fascist Hitler, motherfucking Nazi motherfuckers want to form a fascist international in our Americas. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I can't stand U.S. imperialism, and U.S. imperialism does not solve whatever problems the nation of Nicaragua is going through. So being cautious, leave your goddamn hands off of Nicaragua. Do not invade Nicaragua. What the fuck? America, you fucking kidding me? Let's learn a little bit of history. So in the lead up to the February 25th, 1990 elections, President George H.W. Bush told the Nicaraguan people that the U.S. would keep funding the Contras, counter-revolutionaries recruited, funded, directed by President Ronald Reagan, the State Department, and the CIA in the 1980s. It's an illegal war. It was illegal. There was no congressional. That's what the Iran-Contra was all about. And then also block loans, maintain brutal economic blockade where Nicaragua couldn't even get medicine or parts for an x-ray machine. So we were doing this shit in the 90s under, you know, Papa Bush, under Ronald Reagan and Papa Bush and under Donald Trump and Joe Biden. What the fuck? It's like we just keep on picking on these tiny little countries. We keep picking on fucking poor Cuba. We keep on picking on poor Bolivia. Now we're picking on Nicaragua. I thought we believed in self-determination. Let Nicaragua determine for themselves what kind of nation, what kind of government, what kind of society they want. We're going to sit there and say they can't get medicine or they can't get x-ray machines. We're going to do economic sanctions as well as, you know, just outright warfare. So 1990, 500,000 people came out to show support for the Sandinista National Liberation Front. But the FSLN lost to the U.S. handpicked candidate Violeta Chamorro because of the blackmail and coercion with the election result. So the U.S. government loves when they can, force their candidate down the throats of, a foreign nation, shove their neoliberal, pro-U.S., whatever, plutocrat, pro-imperialist, capitalist policy. And then Nicaragua, when they lost the election, they turned over, they gave their country to Violeta Chamorro. So they respected democracy. They respected the election. And then what happened? What did Violeta Chamorro, what did he do? Oh, he just imposed 17 years of neoliberal austerity. Just about everything was privatized, leading to a reversal of social gains like the glass of milk for children program. Brutal sanctions in the form of 2018 NICA Act. So you had the Nicaraguan Human Rights and Anti-Corruption Act of 2018 called the NICA Act. NICA of 2018, and the bill imposed restrictions and sanctions on institutions and individuals responsible for the Nicaraguan government's violence and infringement of the civil rights of protesters. And so that was 2018. The Renacer Act of 2021. Renacer is a Spanish word which means to be reborn. So very clever calling it Renacer. Renacer was passed, days before the election. The State Department pushed a new package of sanctions called the Renacer through Congress. From an NPR article, Daniel Ortega is on the ballot for a fourth consecutive term, and many are calling the election a sham. Daniel Ortega has been president since 2017. That's 14 years in power. 14 years, 10 years is my cutting off point. And actually, Daniel Ortega was a military commander who helped overthrow a U.S.-backed dictator in 1979. So Daniel Ortega has actually been in power for 11 years plus 14 years, 25 years in power total. But he's like, Fidel Castro having to fight this big-ass U.S. empire on his goddamn back while trying to also run his country. Ronald Reagan went to war with the Sandinistas in the 1980s. That's the Iran-Contra. We sold Iran weapons to get money to the Contras in Nicaragua who are fighting the Sandinistas, hence Iran-Contra scandal. The Sandinista leader who governed Nicaragua from 1979 to 1990 was Daniel Ortega, and then he's going to return to power in 2007. So it wasn't 25 years straight, right? It was 11 years, and then it was 14 years. 14 years is still more than 10 years, and I don't like people being in power for more than a fucking decade. You're one man. You get 1 decade, and that's it. Daniel Ortega said that his critics, his American critics, are just a bunch of damned Yankee imperialists, and he accused them of trying to undermine Nicaragua's election process. Those who are in prison, this is Daniel Ortega. Those who are in prison are the sons of the female dog of Yankee imperialism. They're the sons of that bitch. Yankee imperialism. They should be taken to the United States because they stopped being Nicaraguans a long time ago. They got no fatherland. So a lot of people want to make, he's jailed 150, opposition leaders, but most of those are right-wing fascists. It is interesting that 7 of those 150 said they wanted to run for president. And so I wonder why those 7 were not allowed to run for president. On Monday, the results of the election were announced. The FSLN had won by a landslide. This is the recent elections, 2021. So Daniel Ortega, he won, by a landslide, overwhelming victory. Hell, this is an Assad victory, 76%. Jesus Christ. Voter turnout, they said, was 65% of all eligible voters. Higher than the U.S., last U.S. election. When it was measured by registered, not eligible voters. The Constitutional Liberal Party placed second, like in the 2016 elections, with 14%. The rest of the vote was spread among the other 4 parties. What the fuck? That is not a fair election. 76% to 14%. Daniel Ortega took out all the oppositional leaders that actually had a chance of winning. Fuck you. Fuck this. This ain't a real fucking election. Jesus Christ. 18% turnout. Virginia's primary wasn't a legitimate. I was pissed off about that. 8% fucking turnout rate. 18%. That's not democracy. Jesus fucking Christ. 18% turnout and 76% of all those 18% wanted Daniel Ortega and only 14% won the Constitutional Liberal Party. What about those 7 candidates that wanted to run? You need to have one formidable, my God, you got to make it look good. Daniel Ortega, if you're going to have an election, you can't be such a, rat bastard, cheating bastard. You got to make it look like it's 55, 65% at the most, 40 to 60. 60, 40 is a landslide. So if you're like way above 60 with 76% is 16 points above 60, and then 14%, 76 to 14%, motherfuck, that's what, 62 points. So you had Daniel Ortega beat the second place loser by 62 points. That's not a fair election. That's not a fair election. It's also not democracy. 18%. So most of the people in Nicaragua did not vote. Whereas the Convo Couch and Ben Norton of the Grayzone interviewed people going to the polls. They didn't interview the people in the houses that did not go to the polls. So they didn't really talk to, they were kind of biased to the citizens who are going to the polls, but they didn't really talk to everybody else. So according to, Spanish, I don't know, Google Translate, renacer is a Spanish word that means one who is born again. But what renacer actually means for the bill is reinforcing Nicaragua's adherence to conditions for electoral reform. Renacer. So Joe Biden signs renacer. I guess we're going to go to war in Nicaragua. Why? Well, let's be honest. Daniel Ortega is a leftist president. Daniel Ortega builds schools and hospitals for the people. Daniel Ortega gives a goddamn fuck. He's a socialist. That's why the Yankee capitalist imperialist bastards don't want him in power. And as much as I would like, a socialist to be in power forever, I want to have a sense of these countries actually giving a goddamn fuck about having an honest and fair election. No. So why would I side against the empire in this? Because that's where I eventually, just to be cautious. You're going to have NPR and you're going to have all these other, institutions that call Nicaragua a sham election. There's lots of misinformation that's out there. Right-wing fascists have been jailed. None of them were actually presidential candidates. Most of them, right? 150 have been jailed. And none of them were actually, seven of them said that they want to be presidential candidate. So Biden, Donald Trump, right? Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan,